All right, guys, welcome. This is Breakfast with the Brand, the number one podcast in the world for entrepreneurs and leaders like yourself who want to go to the next level. If you are tuned in live, go ahead and put some flames in the chat. And of course, let us know where you're listening in from. Of course, my name is Junior Frederick. I'm your host, and I have with me the man himself, Mr. Bobby Stealth. And today we're going to be talking about branding, but we're also going to be talking about a little bit about the emotions that go along with building a business. And when I say emotions, I don't mean, just like sappy emotions. Emotions are different, right? So you have emotions that are fun, you have emotions that are sad, you have emotions that are excited, you have emotions that evoke courage. So we're going to be talking about all of that. Of course, if you have any questions as we go through this discussion, then please go ahead and put them in the comments. And the only ask that I do have, right, this is 100% free, but if I had to have an ask, what I would say is if you find value from this episode, just share the show with one other person. I'm not asking for 100, I'm not asking for 1,000, although that would be nice, but just one other person, right? If you find value from this episode. With that being said, Bobby, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing great, Junior. It's so good to be live. So good to be live. So happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there that were able to give birth at some point in life and were able to enjoy those children. And um, if you're in a space where you no longer have your parents, that's a experience as well, because I shared some moments with some people that were just like, man, this is my first year without them. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. And I reached out to my mom, I'm like, wow, there's going to be a time where I'm not going to have her. There's going to be a time where Pops is not going to be there to pick up my phone. So that was an enlightening experience for me. So we traveled. So I'm doing really good, feeling refreshed, excited. Um, and Father's Day is coming up. So that's interesting too.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And of course, happy belated Mother's Day to all of our phenomenal mothers. Listen, we love our mothers. In fact, one of my earliest memories is actually with my grandmother. I can remember my grandmother, me just sort of just sitting on the floor and eating like a porridge. My grandmother, she used to feed me every morning. My parents used to go to work, and then I was sort of raised with my grandmother, so to speak. So if I had to go like literally way back, in the old file cabinet, I would say like those are one of my earliest memories. So we have to absolutely appreciate our mothers. We have to cherish them because, like you say, Bobby, one day they're not gonna be there. They're not gonna be there. I remember one of my other grandmother. And guys, put it in the chat. When I used to go see my other grandmother, she's already passed. In fact, both of my grandmothers already passed. She used to always give me little things. Like she used to give me sometimes money, give me treats, all kinds of stuff without the parents' knowledge, if you know what I mean. Like the stuff we're not supposed to have, the sweets, the biscuits, you know, that's what grandmothers are for. And of course, the mothers, they're absolutely phenomenal. We can't imagine life without them. So shout out to them. Yeah, man. But put it in the chat, guys. How was your weekend? Let us know. What did you do? How did you celebrate? I went out with my mom. I also went out with my wife as well, and it was absolutely amazing. So, Bobby, today, man, today we want to get into a little bit of the uh, the emotions of being an entrepreneur, or just the cycle, just the emotional cycle. I'm gonna let you take the lead on this, because I know you have a couple of thoughts, especially when it comes to urgency, when it comes to courage, when it comes to just the things that go into making business and just life successful.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, I was listening to one of my favorite sales professionals, Zig Ziglar. He's an old 70s, 80s type dude, but I just love his approach. He was such a enthusiastic guy. So I was listening to him, and he was talking about urgency. He was like, there's never the right time. There's never the best time to do something, but there's always right now. There's always the moment, the now. And what I took from that when it came to building a business is you're never going to have all the money you want before you make an investment. You're never going to know all the things you need to know before you get into something and you find yourself on the other side. So, one of the biggest emotions that I think entrepreneurs battle with is the balance between courage and fear. Because when courage arises, you've got to face courage with fear. And sometimes you'll be extremely courageous, so courageous that you're borderline silly, and you'll need a dose of fear, like a good, healthy dose, like, hey, that's not smart. And Ray Dalio talks about this in his book. He talks about him winning back to back to back to back to back to the point where he thought he was invincible. So then he became fearless, but he became so fearless that he became silly, foolish. And he bet wrong one time so badly that he had to move back in with his folks.
Hmm.
And he had a family and a wife and a kid at this time, and he had to move back in with his folks because he lost it all to that degree. So I think it's interesting as business owners and entrepreneurs to balance courage and to acknowledge fear, not to be motivated by it or not allow it to decide for us, but acknowledge it there. So that's kind of where I'm going to be coming from today's conversation, Junior, just like how I've had to be courageous at different stages in my business and what that looks like. And then where fear has oftentimes caused me to grow, caused me to lose, and caused me to win. So that's kind of where I'm going to be coming from today. How about
That
you?
sounds interesting. That sounds interesting, Bobby. I have a slightly different perspective, which
Mm-hmm.
I'll be happy to share with you. In fact, I've been reading, we read all the time. I'm reading a book right now. I went back to read The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump, which I think is a phenomenal book when it comes to like sales and when it comes to deal making. And there are also a few other books, and I'll be sharing a few takes from that. One thing that just came to mind while you were speaking is in the book, it says, protect the downside and the upside will take care of itself. So protect the downside. So when you're making a deal, when you're doing a sale, when you're doing something in business, you protect your downside, meaning that you protect yourself from failure. And if you could eliminate the downside, you normally get the upside. So I'll be coming from that perspective because if you guys have taken the DISC assessment, I'm a 99C, but I'm also a high D. So I have the nice balance of, basically being able to see things from both perspectives. So courageous, yes, but then like you just explained with Dalio, I think it gets pretty dangerous when courage turns into hubris. Because as we know, guys, the pride always comes before the fall. We'll be taking a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking a little bit about the dichotomy of courage and fear and how you as an entrepreneur could deploy this to be successful in business. Stay tuned. This is Breakfast with the Brand. Let's grow.
Confidence is key. Most of the people I work with, they have the education, the experience, and the expertise. We call those the 3 E's. But they're looking for the 3 I's, the income, the impact, and the independence. And I always tell them that the bridge between the 3 E's and the 3 I's is marrying your confidence to your competence. Most of the people I work with, again, have all of the competence in the world. What I help them do is get the confidence. The difference between sales and closing, I get this all of the time, guys. Closing is elegant. Closing is luxurious. Closing is the most profitable. Sales, high pressure tactics. No one associates car sales, right, the sleazy sales tactics with closing, because closing is elegant. Closing is excellent. You have to be a professional in order to close deals. Listen, when you do this the right way, when you learn what we're going to teach you in here, your clients will be trying to close you. And they won't let you close them for low numbers. So you'll be able to heighten, increase your profitability, increase your visibility, increase your reach, and increase your impact in the marketplace. And be confident and comfortable charging higher prices than you ever thought possible to the right people who can actually pay for them and then say thank you for closing them.
All right, guys, welcome back. If you are now tuned in, you still have an opportunity to put your flames in the chat and let us know where you're listening in from. So, Bobby, we're talking about courage and fear, right? The
Yeah.
dichotomy of courage and fear, and how you as an entrepreneur could deploy this to be successful in business. So, tell us your perspective, Bobby. What is
Yeah.
your perspective on this,
I
this
like
courage
to
and
tell
fear
you guys
thing?
a story. I'll tell you guys a story. Um, I remember one year I was building the business ferociously. I mean, investing everything. And I don't know about you guys, but if you're in the States and you've invested a lot of money and you couldn't pay all the money back, there's this thing called a demand letter. So a demand letter comes after you've missed payment number one, missed payment number two, missed payment number three, and they're sending you emails. You missed payment number four. And when I say missed payment, I mean you're not paying anything. Like you owe them money, the interest is stacking, the late payments are stacking, everything is stacking, and you haven't given them a dime. And it's because in most cases, if you're an entrepreneur, you don't have a dime to give them. If you were doing what I was doing, I was going all in. I mean, I took everything, ooh, and I invested it all at one time. Some might say that was a bit hubris, you know. Some may say it was a bit courageous. I definitely felt fear. I'll say that. Like when I got the letter, it was the first time I'd ever seen anything like this. Like I was had a really good credit score before I was getting into business. I paid all my stuff on time. I was in the military. Like I had no idea people could do this. So pretty much what a demand letter says is they're demanding all of their money or else. And by or else they mean legal action. It's like if you don't pay me these X tens of thousands of dollars in the next 24 hours, litigation will ensue. And you're paying for it. So I got that letter and I was looking at it like, shoot. So what am I going to do? Like, I don't have all this money that they're asking me for, but I still had my business and I still had money that I was expecting. So I said to myself, well, we still got time. They said 24 hours. I still got 24 hours. We can still make something happen. We can still turn this around. So I took all the courage I had, pushed every ounce of fear out of my body. I picked up the phone and I said, hey, this amount of money you're asking for, I don't have it right now. This is what I do have. And this is when I might have something else. And I'm turning and burning until I get you the rest. What can we do? They said pretty much we've exhausted all of our efforts. Like there's nothing we can do for you, Mr. Jackson. Like we need this money or else. I kept on holding on. Lo and behold, the weekend comes. Over the weekend, I go to the church, the tabernacle, and I pray to my God, you know, my entity. And I say, hey, bail me out of this one. You know, I'll make sure I go back and tell the bank who was in control here. And lo and behold, I got like this huge settlement of cash that came in, and I paid off everybody. I mean, I felt like I had put, like, imagine going to the bank and then taking like thousands of dollars out in ones. You ask for it in ones and you put it in a briefcase. And then you go into their place of business and you open the briefcase and just dump it on their table. Like that's what I felt. I was like, here, is this what you wanted? Is this what you wanted? But I say all of that to say this. It was an experience. And during that experience, I learned that you got to stay calm. You got to stay courageous. And fear is usually anticipation of the unknown. Like they sent me a letter, but I still had 24 hours. So why stress? And I mean, and then in 24 hours time, well, the weekend came. Great. Glory be to God is how I said it at that time, you know? And then boom, over the weekend, I got this large sum of money. So my perspective, you know, just from that one experience is that you never it's never wise in my opinion to stress over things that have not happened yet, and that's usually what fear is. It's usually the anticipation of something negative and your inability to change the possibility. So you get anxious and worried about the potential outcomes. When entrepreneurs have to like take action that is courageous and also poised under pressure. So that's what I learned in that unique experience.
Absolutely amazing, Bobby. I love the way you brought in faith, because I think faith is a big thing when it comes to entrepreneurship. I think faith is absolutely huge in not just entrepreneurship, but literally all areas of life. But I also love the fact that you were able to stay calm and do what was available to you. And it's amazing how that money came in. Isn't it funny, guys, how God works in mysterious ways?
Yeah.
And Bobby, you're not the only one. I've heard countless stories of entrepreneurs going through similar stuff and just finding money out of nowhere. Even myself, I've gone through it as well. One day I was going through something very similar, not with the demand letter and all that. I don't think we have that where I'm from, but I definitely know what that is. But I just woke up and I saw money in my account and I don't know where it came from. I still don't know where it came from. To this day, I still don't know where it came from. But I knew that it was there. I could, pay the bills and stuff like that. I don't know where it came from. I kid you not. I kid you not. So sometimes, I mean, faith is a big element. And I believe even in Sean's book, The Seven Prerequisites to Success, I believe faith is one of those prerequisites, because as an entrepreneur, the reality is you're going to have to make moves where you don't have all the information. And I think, interestingly enough, Joel Smith, shout out to Joel. I remember the last time Joel was there, we were talking about this. So I asked him, like, as a strategic leader, how do you make a decision when you don't have all the information? And then he said to me, you have to know when good enough is good enough. Like, you have to determine when good enough is good enough. So faith is definitely a huge thing when it comes to entrepreneurship. Now, Bobby, funny enough, I was having a conversation just yesterday with somebody from our community, actually, and they're going through something, and they're a little bit worried and stressed. And I said to them, that's cool, that's all right, I understand where you're coming from, but I tell them, like, a clear head always prevails, right? So let's just take a step back and let's just define a clear, like, let's just put on a clearly defined goal. So what do we actually want? So he started telling me about branding and this, and I said, no, we need money, that's what we want. So how do we get money? You can make the money so you can build a brand. You can build a brand later. Will a brand bring you money? Yes. But for now, you need money right now. So how can we make money right now? And just for having a discussion, short 30-minute discussion, we were able to put together a plan that they're supposed to be doing today, actually. In fact, last night, so that they could start generating some revenue.
Nice.
But they would have never found that if they were still in that mood. It's almost like a downward spiral, so to speak. Like, you start worrying, you start coming with the fear, you start coming with the worry and all of that, and it's like a endless downward spiral until you find yourself in a rut where you're finally forced to say, okay, now I'm here, I'm at a rock bottom. What do I do now? And then you start to think clearly. I think if you have the mental, ability to sort of step away from all the emotion for a little while and just come with a clear head and say, okay, just like Bobby did, I'm in this situation now. This is what it is. What can I do right now to get myself out of this rut? Right? And I would say that that is a huge thing. Like, being able to separate the emotion and the fear of loss from, like, the drive and the situation and the motivation that you need to move forward is one of the biggest things you can have as an entrepreneur. And I remember Sean saying this: you exist in two different places. You exist in the future, but you also exist in the present. So you see things in the future, but you're working with what you have today. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, which most of us are, you most likely have a bright idea of the future. So you're not anticipating, most of us don't anticipate those moments, right, Bobby? We don't anticipate the demand letters. We don't anticipate not being able to use Stripe, banks shutting down, credit cards maxing out. We don't anticipate that stuff. But that's part of the game. That's all part of it. But you can't know that until you get there. So what do? You have to move forward with faith. But I also believe, Bobby, as much as you have to move forward with faith, I also believe that you have to be, to some degree, you have to be able to calculate some stuff. There's a book called Only the Paranoid Survive. Only the Paranoid Survive. So the people who move forward with complete faith, that's amazing. But only the paranoid survive. Because you have to think, so what if, what if this happened? What if that? I'm not saying like 1,000 possibilities, but just basic stuff. So what if this happens this month? What if I can't pay my bill this month? What if this person doesn't close this month? What do I do? What if this deal doesn't come in? What do I do? What if I'm not able to close X, Y, and Z? What should I do? What if the calculation or the whatever I thought was going to happen doesn't happen? What do I do? And then you have to put very, very simple stuff in place to protect the downside so that the upside can take care of itself. That's my opinion. That's what I do. I protect my downside. So even if, as long as you don't lose. So if you're in stock, as long as you don't lose money, you're doing good. If you're in the market, as long as you just don't lose money. Maybe you don't make a profit every day, but as long as you don't lose any money, you're doing absolutely phenomenal. So that's my perspective on that. Move forward with faith, but also put measures in place to protect you to some degree, right? So that if things don't go the way you think they're gonna go, you have some kind of ground to stand on. And that's my opinion on that.
Yeah. Junior, one thing that Jim Rohn said once, he said something to the effect, everything is risky.
Mhm.
It's so risky that life itself is something you can't get out of alive. Something to that effect. He's like, life is so risky you can't get out alive. Now he tells the joke far better than I just did, but it made me think of something. You know, it made me think of procrastination versus urgency. If you have a sense of urgency, you're going to take action. If you are procrastinating, you're going to be stuck in inaction. If you take action, you always have a chance. In most instances, you got a chance. If you take no action, you've got no chance. And that is something that I think is pretty interesting when it comes to risk, because risk is all about the odds. It's all about the chance of you getting it right. It's all about the opportunity that could present itself, that may present itself. And that is a part of business that I think catches a lot of people off guard. So Shaan says money follows movement, but I don't think a lot of people know how much you actually have to move in order for the money to follow you. Like inaction is the death of a business in my experience. Like if you're not constantly moving in the right direction. So it's like you've got movement and then you've got progress, forward progress. So you've got to, one, not just be taking actions that don't move you forward. So the sequencing of the actions need to make sense, but also you have to be constantly taking action. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I made as I was building my business and trying to get everything figured out was I I was like the opposite. I took too much action without enough reason, like without enough thinking, without enough time to sit back and calculate things. But it worked out for me. And here's why I think it did. I think it worked out for me because if I had not taken action, I would have been worse off. I feel like I took so much action and I kept relentlessly moving forward in the right direction that all of my mistakes by chance worked out simply because I was taking so much action that I gave myself a chance every day. Like every hour I was doing something because I left my job completely. Once I got out of the military, like I didn't necessarily go directly back into the workforce, but
Yeah.
eventually I did because I needed to bridge some things over. But like I gave myself so many opportunities to win that all of my ignorance was outweighed by my action. Like, can you believe it? Like all of my ignorance was outweighed by my action. And one of the worst combinations that I've ever seen in a entrepreneur is ignorance and inaction. Because if you're ignorant and you're inactive and you're in an environment that requires knowledge and action, you're toast. Like you're toast. And here's how it shows up so that you know if this is you. If this is you, definitely ask us some questions. Get inside of a community. Learn what you need to know. But if this is you, you know that you're probably in hot water, because this was me at one point in time, right? Or I was on the other side of the spectrum, right? Watching other people. So here's what it could look like. You know that you don't like where you are. You got a 9-to-5 and you don't like it. You know that you don't know something. Like you know that there's a knowledge gap, but you haven't taken any action to fill that knowledge gap. Like you may watch some YouTube videos, you may read some books, but you know that there's a real knowledge gap and you haven't taken significant action in closing the gap. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is your grind doesn't match your vision. So action is all about making sure the grind and the vision are equal, as close to equal as possible. So people will say to me, you know, I want to build my business and I want to leave the 9-to-5, but they're not really ready to take the leap of faith. So let me see how close we are to the break. Okay, so we're a little bit over. So I'll make this very quick. So what I see when it comes to inaction, the piece that like just hangs people up is there's a leap that needs to happen. And that leap has to happen normally when you don't have enough information or enough money. Those two things normally are present at the same time. You don't have enough information, you don't have enough money. And the leap of faith is saying that if you take this leap of faith, on the other side of it is more time, more money, and more information. And the only way you can get those three things that you need in order to build the bridge from the 9-to-5 to the land of milk and honey, the promised land, is to take the leap of faith. And that's where most people just get hung up. It's that inaction and state of ignorance. And there's no way to become knowledgeable, and meaning the reversal of ignorance, unless you dive into the deep. And then there's no way to move forward and dive if you are stuck on the edge, unable to act.
Yeah, Bobby, really, very quickly before we go to the break. So that's actually a fallacy. Like we as human beings, there are a couple of fallacies that we have. It's called the when then fallacy, literally. And you could Google, anybody can just Google this. So somebody Google this, type in Google the when then fallacy. So what is the when then fallacy? The when then fallacy basically means when I have the money, then I'll make the investment. So people have this thing like, okay, when I do this, then I'll do that. So the reason people don't take a leap of faith, or let's say they don't buy something, you know, a guy will say, well, I want to do a website. The website costs $5,000, $10,000, however much. He'll say, well, when I make the money, then I'll build a website. Bro, if you had the money, you wouldn't need the website. The point of the website is to make you the money. The point of the program is to make you the money. Some people tell me, well, when I have the money, then I'll join the program. If you had the money, you wouldn't need the program. So it's just a fallacy that we as human beings have. But before we go to the break, one thing I will say again on this point is that, guys, if you're thinking of taking a leap of faith in any direction when it comes to you doing what you want to do, like I said, always protect your downside. But if you've done that, like literally, whether it's in time, money, effort, remember, success is always going to cost more than you want to pay. Like you're not going to ever come into something where you're willing to pay 5K and then it costs 5K. It's always going to cost more than you want to pay. And that's in time, that's in money, and yes, that is in effort. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
When I think of brand you, I think of being your best self, your most authentic. The reason why we were able to crush business, absolutely dominate in business without having the marketing list, without having the email huge list, without having the Facebook ads and the advertising budget, without knowing the algorithm. The reason we were able to do this is because I branded myself. I told my authentic story and I was comfortable in my skin. Why? because it was that time in the world where everything was shifting. It was 2020, March. So you remember what happened during that time. It was like the world was coming to an end. So you didn't have anything to hold back. So I chose to give everything that I had and be everything that I am. And because I was that, because I branded me, because I was authentic, everything shifted. And people wanted more. And they wanted to know more about me and how they could become more comfortable in their skin. Listen, guys, when you brand you and not what you do, you're gonna add a zero to the world, but you'll also add a zero to your revenue. Let's grow. So when you're young, mommy tells you to play nice. Play nice, Timmy. Let all of the other kids play too. But in business, it's not about playing nice. In business, it's about winning. It's about adding multiple zeros to your revenue. Now, of course, your staff wins. And when you win, other people win. However, when it comes to competition, you absolutely must dominate. You can't play for participation, and you can't play just to get along or just to get by, because business is serious. Business will help you to change the world, or the world will change you. Your people will either win or your people will lose based on your level of leadership, what you're willing to do, what you're willing to sacrifice, and how much you know about dominating.
All right, guys, we are back and we're talking about fear and courage and how you as an entrepreneur can use this to become successful. So, Bobby, one of the things that came to mind as you were speaking was like sequencing, like when to execute, when to wait. So, let me ask you a question, just from your perspective, like you being like your personality, who's like a sort of like a high D personality. Is there ever a time where, because I know high Ds, and by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to www.shawnrais.com, take the uh the branded like a leader assessment, right? So go there, take that assessment. It's going to give you more information about your personality type and your influencer brand profile. In fact, there's somewhere in the description of this video on YouTube, there's actually a link that's going to give you access to your influencer brand profile. So click that link if you have no clue what I'm talking about, and it will be explained to you. So what be your personality? I know a lot of IDs, they're all like act first, think later. Let's do this now. We can think about this stuff later. Is there ever a time for you where you distinguish between, okay, when should I execute and then when should I wait? Is there ever a time like that for you? Or are you like, just take action, 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 action. We can think and we can wait later. Is that you? So which one are you?
That's a great question, Junior. And it's a great question because it's a nature versus nurture question for me. So my nature, I think, is not high D. But that's how my disc assessment says it. But my nature is more high C. Calculate, think, and engage. But my military experiences, 12 years there, and the type of job that I had and the responsibilities that I had made me, through nurture, a very high D oriented executor. So for me, if I had to answer that question, when do I take time and when do I execute? Um, I normally very quickly assess the downside. I say, what's the worst that could happen? And as soon as I found out the worst that could happen, I will avoid that outcome at all costs, or to the best of my abilities. Nothing else is off limits. So that's how I'm able to act extremely fast. Is if I say, okay, worst case scenario, I lose the house. All right, I can't lose the house. Everything else is game. And then I start taking action.
Mm. That's interesting. So you just basically just avoid the worst case scenario, basically.
Yeah.
So as long as you don't I guess as long as you stay away from the worst possible scenario, like you're all in.
Pretty much, like I account. That's how I do risk management, decision making for myself. Now, for other companies, obviously, I would use a more regimented approach. That's how I do it for myself.
Yes, sir. That's interesting. What are your thoughts on sequencing? Because for me, what I've seen, what I've experienced firsthand is that you can execute to a super high degree, but if you don't do step one when it's step number one, if you try to do step number three in step number one, when you get to step number three, you normally confuse and then you have to go
Yeah,
back,
yeah,
which is like sort of like a common thing for high D personality types. So it's like
mhm,
let's execute now, let's think about this stuff later. And when we get down the street, it's like, hold on, why isn't this here? Well, you were supposed to do this over here.
mhm.
So what are your thoughts on sequencing? Because for me, and by the way, I'm a high D as well. So there will be times where I want to execute, and I'm a massive executor. Like when I do something, I do it to completion. I don't do it and I stop halfway. I do it to 100% completion. That's me. I will stick with it and I will complete it and I will execute on it until it's done. Until like nobody can, until it's perfect, until it's 99, like just like Clorox cleans 99.99% of germs.
Yeah,
Go until it's like 99.99% and it's done.
right.
But there are times when I want to execute and do certain things, but then wisdom also tells me like, okay, Junior, this is step number five. You're in step number two. Why would you do? Don't as much as you want to execute on step number five, you need to do step number three. So then I will consciously not execute on something at this time because I'm saying to myself, it doesn't really make sense. I could do it, yes, but now is not the right time to do it. So what are your thoughts on that as far as sequencing is concerned?
Junior. Oh my goodness, I can't believe this. This is so funny though, but it's like what I wrote down was maturity and self control. Maturity and self control. And the reason I say I can't believe this is because it's like I am I'm a Gemini. Okay. Now I don't believe that there's too much to these zodiac signs, but mine is pretty close. Like much of the things that there says about mine, pretty accurate. So one of the things that they say about Geminis is that we're very playful and childish, and that we normally just like to have fun. And I can say that that's me. I'm here for the adventure, Junior. Like I'm there for the ride. like I don't really care about how well it's done, like sequence wise, but it matters. But like I do stuff like that all the time, and it ends up creating a heck of a ride for me. But I feel like you got to be built for that. Like not everybody is built for roller coasters. Like they're like, I don't want to ride. I don't want to ride the ride. But for me, like the Gemini, so to speak, in my personality type, like we like spontaneity. We like adventure. We like to not know. We like to be lost for a little bit because we like puzzles. We enjoy the the confusion. And because to us it's fun. Like it's like, oh, I figured that out. And but the downside to this, and it's a huge downside, a very big downside, is that you're usually a terrible team player. Absolutely terrible. Because like the high D, high C. So for me, like, and my I isn't even that extremely high. So like, I'm a very interesting person. I think, well, at least people tell me they're like, Bobby, you don't like to talk to people, but you like helping people. You don't like to like do things in this order, but you like things to get done right. So it's like, what are you like? Why are you so polarized? And I guess what I would say, and this is just to help you all, not feel
And
ashamed
by the way,
or strange.
by the way, guys, what type of entrepreneur are you? So
Yeah.
are you the kind of entrepreneur like let's say like Bobby who's maybe a little bit more structured, not structured, sorry, but who's a little bit more spontaneous, and you're just there for the ride. You just want to have fun. You're just there for the ride. You don't really care about the structure. You don't really care about the sequencing. Or are you more like me, who I'm also there for the ride, but I'm like, hey, if we're gonna be, doing something, let's just do it right. Let's do it right the first time. Let's
Mm-hmm.
not think about it again. I don't want to come back to it in 2 months' time, 1 month time, not a week's time. I don't want to look at it again. I'm just gonna do this and do this right. So which type are you? Type one or type two? And by the way, both types work. Like that's the thing too. All personality types work. The other day I did a search on personality types of a couple of billionaires. So I looked at Mark Zuckerberg, I looked at Elon Musk, I looked at Jeff, I think it was Jeff Bezos, and I also looked at Bill Gates. And they all have different personality types. So that tells you that success, all personality types can be successful. So what is that for you? Is it number one or is it number two? Go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tie it up with this. It can be a downside to it because we can be terrible team players because we're not very considerate, you know. And I think that's what the upside of the systematic thinker is. Like the person that's structured like Junior, I think their upside would be they have the capacity to consider a lot more people and a lot more functions. So I think that makes them very good team players. The downside maybe to extreme structure might be adaptability, flexibility. Maybe that's something they would have to work on. They would have to
Yeah.
actively force themselves to break their system down to do something it wasn't designed to do. And that might be tough for this systematic thinker. So all in all, I said maturity and self-control because a lot of people would look at me or would look at versions of me as I've gone on my entrepreneurial journey because I've definitely matured. And they would say, like, man, you're a big kid. Like I definitely fall into that Gemini's Gemini, like Donald Trump, the other guy, Kanye West, Tupac. Like they're just like what are they doing? But they're doing it and it's working and they're having fun while they do it. Andre 3000, like those types of people, Prince, like we're all just like, let's have fun. We got to grow up eventually. And when we do grow up, we learn that you can't, what do they say? If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go together. So that's what I would say my personality type is. Spontaneous and childish to a degree.
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up these two. Because I actually believe, Bobby, that there are like I 100% agree. Like the downside to structure is no fun.
Yeah.
Structure can be too rigid, it's not adaptable. So what I've learned, and I've learned this like over several years, you have to be adaptable. So I can be a high D when I need to, I can be a high I, high C, high S. I can do, I can adapt myself to various situations. I love what you said about the maturity part because, and by the way, there's a book called How the Mighty Fall. So How the Mighty Fall. That'll be the next book on my reading list. It's called How the Mighty Fall. You could look at it on Amazon. But in that, it basically talks about, I believe it was like 5 signs that you're going out of business. 5 signs you're going out of business and you don't know. Or 5 things that entrepreneurs do that put them out of business and they don't know. One of those things is particularly, I guess, targeted towards the personality type that we're talking about, the very spontaneous person. And I'm going to read it out. It's called the undisciplined pursuit of the new.
Mhm.
So, undisciplined pursuit of the new, which basically means you have a new idea every single day, you have a new idea every single hour, which is okay. But if you're not disciplined in your pursuit of the new could take you down very quick. So, why am I talking about this? I think as entrepreneurs, regardless of what your personality type is, because as well, like the structured person, the thing is like analysis or paralysis by analysis could be said for the structured person, right?
Mhm.
You have to be mature as an entrepreneur. So if you're a high D, you have to be a mature D. There is such a thing as an immature D and an immature C. You have to be a mature version of yourself. So even if you're structured like me, you have to know when to have fun. You have to know when to forget about the structure. There are times, but believe it or not, I'll say forget the structure and I'll just do something.
Mhm.
There are times like that. So you have to know like when to apply what. Like when should you be a more people oriented person? If you're trying to rally a team around a vision, you don't really want to be a high C. You want to be a high C partially when you're talking about, okay, how do we get there? But in the moment, you want to be a high I where you could rally people, get them around you, uh, get them infused with the vision, get them on board with what you're trying to do. You have to be a high D. You have to be able to speak. I say this all the time. You have to be able to speak, the dream language as well as just pure logic. Because if you give somebody a dream, but you don't tell them how they're gonna get there, that's like, that's no substance. That's not substantial to me and to many other people. But at the same time, if you tell me how I'm gonna get there, but you don't make it sound fun and exciting, I don't really know if I want to go there, right? So there has to be a nice sort of interplay of personality where you as a CEO or as a CFO or as a CTO, whatever you do, know how to step or how to put on the right persona or how to step into the different facets or aspects of your personality to complete or to achieve whatever objective you set out for yourself. Whether that is, building SOPs for your business. If I'm building SOPs, I'm high D, high C. I don't want anybody to don't talk to me, don't disturb me, get in my way. If I'm giving my team a vision, I'm high I, high S, high D, mostly, right? So I believe that comes from experience, and I believe that comes from maturity, Bobby.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Junior. I had a lot of fun with this conversation today because I think a lot of times we don't think about these things as entrepreneurs. Like, we don't think about who we are. We just think about what we have to do, but we don't think about how it's going to get done. I'll
Yep.
say that again. As entrepreneurs, we oftentimes can think about what we have to do, but we don't consider how it has to get done. I took a Colby assessment yesterday, and I was reading through the assessment, and it said, what makes the Colby assessment different from any other assessment that you've likely taken is that it focuses on your intuitive nature and your likeliness to act, like how you're likely to take action. It doesn't care about your logical thinking. It's not really focused on your IQ. It's not focused on emotional intelligence. It's not focused on intelligence. It's focused on intuitive action. And one of the things that this conversation, I think, has really tried to capture is that if you don't know who you are, it's very difficult to know what your business is supposed to be, because your business is supposed to be an extension of you.
Yeah.
Like Shaan has a speaking brand. There's so, because he's a speaker. Now, granted, that's not all he does, but majority, he's a high I, high D. Where do you see him? On stages, on planes, on lives, on podcasts, like that. The brand is nothing more than an extension of himself, but that's after knowing himself. And a lot of these things are what? Unscripted. Why? Because Shaan's a Gemini too. Like, he's very spontaneous also. He's very, hey, let's do it now. Let's get it done. He's high D. So it's like you can see him in everything that he's produced. And that's the only reason it works, and that it's sustainable, because to our core, we're not really going to change. So imagine him trying to do like something that was more technical, handcuffed him to a desk, and was all scripted. It'd probably be unsustainable. So I just wanted to share that with you guys, because you are the brand, like we always say here, and you got to know you before you can do the things that you really want to do in a sustainable way. At least that's my opinion and experience.
100%. Guys, so this has been amazing. Just a quick announcement. So this Friday on the 17th at 7 p.m., we're going to be having another webinar. And this one is basically going all the way back to Branded Like a Leader, back to Crickets to Digits. The name of that webinar is How I Created a $1 Million Brand in Less Than 90 Days with no email list and no social media following. So if you're in that space right now where you're literally just getting started and you want to learn how you can develop a brand and make money online, then 7 p.m. the 17th, I believe the 17th is Friday, correct, Bobby? So 17th, which is Friday. So Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to know, well, how do you get the link to this? I want you to go to www.shawnrice.com. Just register for our newsletter. In fact, there should be a link to the newsletter in the description of this video. Register for our newsletter and you will automatically be entered into that list so you could get the notifications for when those emails go out. So that is this Friday, 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that webinar is, of course, is going to be absolutely amazing. If you've been to our webinars, then you know that they're always amazing. This one's going to be very special because it's going to go all the way back to the alien call days, the foundational days, the leadership live days, like the days when we woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning. Yes, 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have people from California tuning in at 1 p.m. In fact, 1 a.m. in the night, like after midnight, getting on these calls. If you want to learn how to develop your brand and make money online, then tune in this Friday, 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see you there. All right, guys, so have a phenomenal day. We'll be back tomorrow, same place, same time, 100% live. Thank you so much. This has been Breakfast with the Brand, and let's grow.